Greetings to the viewers of the Dr. Obachashaka show. We're going to have a outstanding, very interesting show today that will be part 3 of a series that we've done with Brother Emory Douglas, former Minister of Culture, Black Panther Party. In part 1, we dealt with the formation, launching of the Black Panther Party. And because Emory was Minister of Culture almost from the beginning of the creation of the Black Panther Party, he had a lot of insights to share that you're not going to find in a book. So that was part 1. And then part 2 of the series, that one dealt with the organization of the Black Panther Party, building it as a national organization, the launching of its newspaper, its survival programs, and the attacks that the Black Panther Party faced from the FBI to the counterintelligence program. So that was part 2. And then we had a space, and we're coming back for part 3. And so today, we have the privilege of enjoying the beautiful art of Emory Douglas. So this is going to be on his art, and you're going to be looking at the impact of Emory Douglas's art on the US and the world, and the various themes of the art. And we have a nice promotional leaflet put out by Brother Cinnabar. Good picture of Emory Douglas, and I asked him to send me the piece of art that he wanted featured, and this would kind of be the summary of the overall view of Black Panther Party towards those that oppress us, the pig. And it has here a statement on the nature of the pig. And you should note in most African cultures, most of them frown on eating the pig. Ancient Egypt, they frowned on eating the pig, mainly because of its foul nature. But the point is, in the art of Emory Douglas and in the message of the Black Panther Party, that was symbolic of our oppressor. And in this case, in definitely the police, and then the establishment in general. So this is going to be a very enjoyable presentation. And Emory Douglas is an example of the fact that African-American culture is a popular culture of the world, and his art is a popular art of the world. How you doing, Brother Emory?
I'm doing fine, Brother Obachashaka. Yeah.
You ready for this?
Yes, I am.
Well, it's always good to be treated to beauty. You know what I mean? So we're going to see beauty in its different forms. And in some way, you know, your art is an example of how we took ugliness and turned it into beauty, because Black people are beautiful, but then we've been put in all these ugly circumstances of oppression. And then you've taken this and taken everyday Black folks and turned them into what everyday Black folks or any everyday people should be, the authors of their own destiny. You know what I mean? Proud people. Yeah. You brought the beauty of everyday Black people. So I say, right on, brother. Was that your intention?
Yes, that was the intention in the context of everything that was taking place at that time. Yes.
And at this time too.
And this time too, yes, because that's the second aspect of the presentation and the art itself, deal with social justice issues of today.
And would you say that you have a love affair with Black people and humanity in general?
Yes, yes, that would be correct.
Yes, brother, it shows up in your work. And that's one of the concluding remarks you made on the second show, that the most important thing is the love of your people, which comes from the love of yourself. And that's expressed in many ways in your art, and I would say that it's everyday Black folks that don't get the strokes. You know what I mean? We will often stroke the big people, and there should be. We have some great people. You know what I mean? And they should be stroked, but they're the product of everyday people. Usually, that was their parents. You know what I mean? The grandparents, their wives, their girlfriends, their boyfriends. You know what I mean? And the elders in the community, the people in the streets who brought them up, who, you know, corrected them when they were wrong, like the old lady in the Fillmore when I broke her window. She corrected me, and then my mother did, you know what I mean? But those are the ones who cared about us, that looked out for us, and those are the people that created our culture. That's everyday people, Black folks whose names we don't know. And that's what I like most about your art and about the Black Panther Party and many of the liberation movements that we put forward here and around the world, is that it's an expression of the act of resistance, the expression of the culture, the beauty of everyday Black folks. So I just want to say to you that that's what's most beautiful about your work, and it comes through you. That's why we've enjoyed you so much, because it comes through you. So we're going to get to see how Brother Emory's work has impacted the world as well as the US. I was just telling him there's an art display of his work in Oakland that he didn't even know about, because it's when it's popular, people just pick it up. And they may not always call you and say, hey, we're doing a display of this, but that's the nature of it. You know what I mean? So I'm sure you're gonna find out who's doing it and everything else, but it's an expression of the people returning the love to you, which you shared in so many different ways. So what's gonna happen here is Brother Emory is gonna share his art, and then afterwards we'll have some comments and then open it up for any comments that people have. And I wanna point out, soon we'll be doing a thing on an aspect of the Black arts movement, kind of fits with Brother Emory's work. We're going to be honoring a brother named Dengani, who was also known before he got his African name as Jogan Calvis, major leader in the Black arts movement, published its first major poetry journal, professionally published, called the Journal of Black Poetry. Dengani was also vice chair of education in San Francisco C.O.R.E. He wrote the introduction to my book, The Political Legacy of Malcolm X. He was a major advisor to me, but he was a figure in his own right. We're going to be honoring him, and that will be fairly soon. So we're going to have some major leaders in the Black arts movement who are going to be speaking about his contribution. So this is fitting that we have a major artist who was inspired by the Black arts movement, became the voice for artistic expression of the political message of the Black Panther Party. So it's all yours, brother.
Okay. Pull it up right now. Say good morning, everyone. This presentation will be a retrospective historical presentation, as well as a one that deals with more recent art that I've done. So it will but I'm starting off with this image here to put a context to it, the historical retrospective art in particular. It was October 15th, 1966. That's when the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was started by Bobby Seale and Huey Newton. Note, in 1968, the name was changed to the Black Panther Party, was shortened to the Black Panther Party. I just used two quotes around each image to give an essence. It's around Bobby, it says, the only solution to pollution is a people's human revolution. And Bobby, around Huey Newton, the image I have here is the spirit of the people is greater than the man's technology. And this, I'll start off when I began. This is the first issue of the 2 issues of the paper. This was the first one, which was done on a legal size sheet of paper. It was typed on a typewriter. and it was done by Bobby Seale. The content level was about a young brother named Denzel Dow who was murdered in North Richmond. And it was some other activists who felt that Huey and Bobby would be able to assist the family. And so they got in contact, and this was their first issue of the Black Panther Party newspaper. It was typed on a mimeograph machine, a copying machine, and it was done on a typewriter, and it was just done with markers for the headlines and what have you. This is the first issue, tabloid issue. This is the one we went called May Day when we went to Sacramento. This was published on May 15th, 1967. And this was the first issue of it. As you can see, this is the clip art here that Huey gave me regarding the pig image that he wanted me to put in the paper. And I initially put it in there. And each week we were going to put the badge number of the police who are bad actors in the community. So to expose them to the community. And it came to me, why don't I stand it up on two hoofs, keep the snort, and what have you. And then that became this image here of the pig that took on a life of its own and became an image of those who were repressing us. And it says, what is a pig? It was a low-natured beast that has no regard for law, justice, or the right of people. A creature that bites the hand that feeds it. A foul, depraved traducer, usually found masquerading as the victim of an unprovoked attack. Now, as you see again here, we still use it in the first several papers, but we then put the page number of the pig police next to this kind of pig. But also, at the time, it was the time we began to draft the Stokely Carmichael into the Black Panther Party when SNCC was moving forward and disbanding in many ways. And we were having out rallies in North Richmond, which was an unincorporated area. And we were trying to encourage Black people to come in to set up their own government during that time because it was unincorporated. Therefore, it was under the sheriff's department. And so we were talking about coming in, you can set up your own police department, your own mayor, and have community control of everything. And the same thing we did discuss that here in the Bay Area in Emeryville, which was another area during that time. This is called your local police. Again, you see 206 is the badge number, I believe, of the policeman that was notoriously known in the community named Fry. That's the one when Huey Newton got wounded, he got killed in Oakland, California. Here again is when we begin to call, I'll go to the right first. This was when the verdict came back and Huey was not found guilty of the murdering of the police. And that evening, that night, they came into the office, by our office, because we were concerned that they may come by and do something. And they, sure enough, they came by and they shot up the office. They just sprayed the office. And I kind of did this cartoon here around that where it says, we'll fire only those who shoot up property and miss killing the niggas. And it says, yes, sir, and the pigs shooting up, drinking alcohol, or what have you. The chief of police then, named Gaines, held a press conference that next day saying, well, he was just frustrated with the verdict that came in. But they weren't fired, nor was they relieved from the police department until there was a mass outcry. Then they had to suspend them from the police department. On the right, on your left here is the community control of police. In the back, the collage of little Bobby Hutton, the very first Panther. Huey Newton, Bobby Seale mentored him pre-Black Panther Party into the Black Panther Party. When he was 15 years of age, he was first member. He was murdered on April 6, 1968 by the Oakland police. I think it was 2 days after Martin Luther King was murdered in Memphis, Tennessee. Then we began to call for community control of the police at that time. And we were able to get it on the ballot in Berkeley, California. So they had some progressive and liberals on the city council there, and we put it to the vote. It lost by 1 vote, but because of being involved, having our newspaper, becoming a more national, international organization operation, it began to become a demand that people would begin to talk about community control of police. Here is one again in 1968. In the 60s, there was many rebellions that took place in the community, and I used it was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. It was held outside. It was held inside. You had the Vietnamese, the war going on in Vietnam. You had all these struggles, resistance struggles, and struggles going on in Africa and in Asia, and also in South America. So it was nowhere to run, here was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. And expelled just America with the 3 Ks as what's something that I originally created, but I thought was relevant to apply it and sample it in this particular image. It's all the same. The local police, the National Guard, the Marines. All that comes under Homeland Security today. Here's again now using another symbol of a capitalist exploitator as a little rat, a U.S. imperialist, and this winding up his toys and sending them off to war. And they realize they're fighting the wrong one. They come back and join the liberation movement. Many of them join the Black Panther Party. This one here to your left is when Richard Nixon was the president. Henry Kissinger was the Secretary of State. And he had they had the war going on. It said third world, Latin America, Africa, with the missiles going into the globe. And they said, ha, 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 good old American peace. To the right is choking the pig with this, get out of Africa, get out of Asia, get out of Africa, get out of the ghetto, get out of Asia, get out of Latin America, U.S. imperialism. Here's again, front paper. Sometimes images were on the front paper pages, but most of the time it was also on the back as well. And this one says, our fight is not in Vietnam, free the GIs. And it was that saying then, the Vietnamese was because of unemployment, the Vietnamese was because of inferior education, the Vietnamese were lynching us, murdering us, and beating us down, because of inferior housing, all those things. Our fight was not in Vietnam. Our fight was right here in this country.
That picture that's bloody, the big brother, that's the San Francisco State.
Yes.
Black Studies Rebellion.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. And to the right here is Sonny Little Rat as an avaricious businessman. That everything it gobbles up comes and poops out, comes out missiles and hand grenades and guns and what have you. Here's one this one was Pig Want War, Panthers Cool, Reagan attacks, Eldridge. This was important from the standpoint that the student body at the UC Berkeley had wanted Eldridge Cleaver to come teach and speak at the University of California, Berkeley. But Ronald Reagan, who was then the governor of the state of California, put pressure on the Board of Regents to not allow Eldridge Cleaver to come and teach at the university, as the student body had wanted and demanded. So I said, did this cartoon as speaking as the racist governor of California, I don't think Eldridge Cleaver should teach at UC Berkeley. And this is symbolically of that issue. This image here, it shows the US and all his little piglets, and his nurse and all his little piglets, who are, and all of them have little names on them, and were directly or indirectly involved in the colonization of people of color all over the world. And this image was first appeared in the, when I was in Algeria in 1969, it appeared in the paper Le Monde, the daily paper there, because I was listening to the conversations that was going on with comrades there, and I came up and interpreted that conversation into this image, what it did. It has the Israel, West Germany, Belgium, Rhodesia, South Africa, Great Britain, all these different countries, Japan, Greece, some of them I can't see on it, France, all of these different countries were colonial countries, colonizers. Here's what the psychological impact of war does to humans. This is a collage showing what the impact of war does to human beings, the psychological impact. It says US government approved. Even today, they're not talking about it, but you have, every day you have veterans who commit suicide in this country behind the psychological impact of the wars that they've been kind of confronted with and been involved in. But you also have those who refused to go, who said, honor, peace with honor, who just refused to go. Some went to prison, some went underground, some left the country. And so we had contacts with many of those, and we had solidarity with those who draft resistors. And we, some, and even over in Europe and Scandinavia, sold our papers and what have you. And Bobby Seale and Elva Bickman, how we should go over and consult with them as well. This is at Cornell. I think it's a film about San Francisco State and called Ages of Change, about Cornell when they were trying to establish their Black Studies department there and got that resistance during that time, and they were threatened, so they went and got their self-defense and defend themselves. This is when they were leaving after an agreement was worked out between them and the I think the president and chancellor of the United States of the university in regards to accepting some of their demand, working out their demands for the Black Studies department. And this was image I did before that, though, Black Studies, but I thought it kind of reflected that during that time. So I use this one, this image here, along with that. Here again is where we begin to coin the word Babylon. And this is 1968. In 1968, you had the P.A.P.O pig with a missile between his toes, a lynching rope in one hand, blood-sucking vulture with a dollar bill as coming dripping out the mouth, water dripping out the mouth, money dropping out the mouth here, hand grenade in one hand, all that going on, chaos during that time. Then you had in New Haven, Connecticut, you had Bobby Seale and Erica Huggins, who had been set up for the murder of Panther, but they were eventually exonerated, and agent provocateurs who did it were found guilty. We had 4 white students at Kent, Ohio, Kent State, at Kent, Ohio, University of Kent in Ohio, who were shot by the National Guard for protesting against the war in Vietnam. You had Black students in Augusta, Georgia, and Jackson, Mississippi, and on many other campuses who were in battle with the authorities and the police. At the same time, you had the war in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Palestine. And here I get the big cutout of the Pentagon, with the pig standing in the middle of the Pentagon. Also in 1968, there was a lot of exhibitions that done around 1968. And that was the year John Carlos and Tommy Smith went to the Olympics in 1968 and gave the Black Power sign during that period. Of course, there were some meetings during that time, and they're discussing what they want to do in regards to expressing their concerns about the human rights violations of African Americans in this country. Of course, all the Olympian participants couldn't come to agreement. So they themselves did the power sign, clenched fist. In I think it was in 1970, 4 years later, at the Olympics in Munich, you had Vince Matthew and Wayne Collette, who ignored the tradition at Munich Olympics. That was the protest was continuing on. And I called it at ease. As you see, when they were on the podium, they weren't crying crocodile tears at the hand of a heart, but they were just standing there. One of them didn't have on the shoes, the whole bit as the ceremony, and when the ceremony was going on. So that was their way of defiance. This was on the back of that paper at that time, at ease. And I think this is kind of like, I looked at this is the kind of spirit that Kaepernick comes out of. The 49er football player, ex-49er who refused to stand for the national anthem and took a knee and what have you. And it was impact because you had WNBA women's basketball. You had these little young kids in these sports teams all over the country and all the world taking that step. So it had an impact. This is called the Olympics. This is to get on the ground. This is like a storyboard without words. The illustrations tell the story without any text and stuff. The Olympics, they won, get on line, they run the race. He comes to the winner's tape, stands up on the podium with the flag in one hand. He gets up again, and when he comes home, and when it's over, a nigga is a nigga is a nigga in the context of the state itself. And this is when you had, so it doesn't matter if you was an Olympian, you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, it doesn't matter if you're Black, you're gonna be profiled in this country. Example of that was in New York, when you had over 600,000 predominantly Black and brown folks, brothers and sisters, who were profiled just for the color of their skin or who they were. And when they had to make the settlement with the Blasio, the mayor just before this new mayor, they had done a study and found out that less than 10% of those who they were profiling had any contraband or guns or what have you. But 45% of the whites who they did not search or what have you had contraband. Here's one when we La Siete de la Raza to your left. These were 7 Latino brothers who were charged with the murder of a San Francisco policeman. And they were just carrying their luggage, their awesome stuff into a house, and the police stopped them in the Mission District in San Francisco. And they called them disrespectful, how they always do, call you everything, except being mindful of respecting you, who you are. And so they had one charged with murder. And they couldn't get any help from the activists in the Latino community at that time. They couldn't get any support when they went around to other Latino activists outside of the Bay Area. So they came to us and asked us would we help. And Bobby said, yeah, we glad to help. And so we shared about 5 or 6 of our papers with them, as the one you seen earlier. The half of that paper was Basquiat and La Siete de la Raza, the 7th. And where they can plead their case and talk about their case. We also helped them get a lawyer and what have you. This is another one of the papers with front of our papers, and showed them how to lay it out, and so they could do it themselves as they came in to work with us. And we got them a lawyer, which one of our lawyers then was Charles Gary, and they were exonerated of the murder of the San Francisco police. It was found out that one of the police shot the other police when they were shooting at them. They didn't have any guns, but they were just standing up, defiant for their rights. And so they were found, but can you imagine if they didn't have any kind of assistance or help? As you have many Black and brown people in prison today who some are getting out after the investigations and what have you. They may still be in prison or die, being ancestors now, because of the fact of being set up. To the right, we were in front of our office on 85th and International, it's called International Way now. It's called East 14th then Street in Oakland, California, where we had our central headquarters. And we heard these, and outside we seen these Latino marchers walking down the street, marching down the middle of the street. We went out to see what was going on. There was Cesar Chavez and about 50 farm workers. And that's what was happening. He said that, well, they were going to Sacramento to protest against the chemicals that were being sprayed on the lettuce, and it was harming the workers' health. But they were hungry and wanted to know where they could get a bite to eat before they continued on picking up supporters as they marched all the way up to the state capitol. And so we were able to work it out to take them to our headquarters, to our school, excuse me, from our headquarters to our school, about 30 blocks away, which we marched with them to our school, and we had lunch with them. And to show our solidarity thereafter, we did this paper saying boycott lettuce, which that was about. But of course, we had also worked with the United Farm with them to get unionized back in the day. We also worked with them to when Safeway stores, I think they was having some real issues with Safeway stores. And there's docket photos showing us when we were out on the picket line down on 27th West with them, boycotting against the Safeway stores. And we also had a few comrades who went down into the valley on several occasions to do things with the in the valley.
Question, I'll go back to that one. This picture here of Emiliano Zapata, is that your drawing?
No, that's not my drawing. Every now and then we use artwork of others to get the spirit of what it was about. Yeah.
Yeah, just for the benefit of viewers, Emiliano Zapata was one of the two principal leaders of the Mexican Revolution, turn of the century. He led the revolution in the South. That's a picture of him. And then there was the Northern Revolution, these two. And Pancho Villa led the revolution in the North. Emiliano Zapata had a vision that was the one thing that prevailed in that revolution, which was communalism. The land should be shared, not owned. And it's only with Bill Clinton's NAFTA that the communal rights to the land enshrined in Pancho Villa's vision, the Mexican Revolution, is overturned. And so that all this land can be turned over to corporations. And so when you see the large influx of Mexicans coming in to the US after that, it's because their own lands have been taken away from them. Emiliano Zapata's mother was African. He was a revolutionary of the highest order. He was murdered eventually by the leaders of the Mexican state. But and behind me, you can't see it, but I have a picture in frame of Pancho Villa, great revolutionary.
Okay. Here again is one when you had the going up in space, and you get us the white only, same thing with when Trump coming out the same, showing the parallel, yeah, or what the continuation.
I would say that's your more recent art.
Yes, yeah, this is the more recent art of one of that. Yeah. Here's a historical one that says when they were going out with the unmanned Sputnik into space and what have you, and I title is whatever's good for the oppressor has got to be bad for us. And here they are up on the Mars, the planet, and here's a pig spaceship. You got the pig out here on the deck of the pig spaceship, and you say, hey, handle those slaves with care. We're gonna need them for Mars, Pluto, and all those other planets. Then you have the brothers and sisters getting off the pig spaceship, and they say, I knew we should have stopped this shit before it got off the ground. Then you had the pigs over here with a pick and shovel saying, okay, God damn it, don't take 400 years this time.
So you call space art, huh?
Yeah. And this is the conditions dealing with the save the children conditions. This is all over the planet now. Yeah.
Yeah, you're capturing the misery, the sadness.
Mm-hmm.
This child here on the right,
Yeah,
probably hungry, no telling what he's gone through.
mm-hmm.
And the same thing with the parent and the child, or the brother and the child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're catching that sadness that
Mm-hmm.
comes from oppression. You know?
This one here was front page. This is what we want decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings. And it's showing the mother here trying to protect her baby from the rabbits, meant to be kind of provocative. She's shooting at the rat hole. And the rats shipping around, sneaking up on the baby.
Uh-huh.
Here again is dealing with the symbol of freedom, but freedom in the context of conditions and psychological impact. Yeah. I have one that had a button of Erica and Bobby Seale on that one, and also just so it had a double meaning to it, and that. And this one says, it is my belief that we Black people need gas and electricity on cold and dark days, doctors and medicine in times of sickness, breakfast, lunch, and dinner in times of hunger. And this is Justice, which I remixed. This one you'll see later on. Some of them remixed, reinterpreted, and repurposed. This one here says, we are soldiers in the army. We have to fight, although we have to die. We have to hold up the blood-stained banner. We have to hold it up until we die. My mother was a soldier. She had in her hand the freedom plow. When she got old and couldn't fight anymore, she said, we're gonna get up and fight anyhow. My father was a soldier. He had in his hand the freedom plow. And when he got old and couldn't fight anymore, he said, we're gonna get up and fight anyhow. Now we all are soldiers who have in our hand the freedom plow. And when we get old and can't fight anymore, we got to get up and fight anyhow.
Right on.
Here is again one that says, I just want to testify. I'm not going to sit around any longer. I got freedom on my mind. It's freedom. Cut out the lodge. You should look at a lot of the books from the South dealing with the living conditions and civil rights movement. And one times when I would do art, want to reference something, I could recall. I couldn't even remember, but when I did the image, I could just recall what I want to use from what I had been, browsing through those books off and on all the time. Here's the one that's We Shall Survive Without a Doubt. And this was the Panther Cubs kids then. And this is when we had the breakfast program, the collage and eyes, doing the sickle cell anemia testing. Yeah. So it's the spirit of do for self, the spirit of we shall survive. Here's again, back in the day, I think this was when we ran Bobby Seale for mayor and did the poster for this saying nothing from nothing leaves nothing, you gotta do something. Register to vote. And this is saying vote for survival. And we vote for survival, free food program, free shoes, free clothes, the things that make quality of life for people much better. A vote for Chisholm is a vote for survival. We supported Shirley Chisholm during that time when she ran for election for president. When she was being marginalized as one who was taking votes away from the Democratic Party. But we didn't think she was going to do anything different than any other, but we felt she was the best candidate. And so we did have rallies for her when she came out to San Francisco and Oakland and during that time as well. To the right is All Power to the People, the baby, and the different social programs collaged into the back. Free health clinic testing, free breakfast for school kids. All of these things, food giveaways, are a part of the collage of All Power, representing All Power to the people. Here's when we did testing for sickle cell anemia, a disease that predominantly impacted the African-American community in this country. And we call it Black genocide. We did over 100,000 free testing throughout the country with doctors and nurses and Panthers and what have you, in regards to the disease. We've had displays in some of the stores and stuff, and where people can get flyers and information about the sickle cell. And this image, I believe, was on the back of the paper, one of the papers one time, dealing about fight sickle cell anemia and what have you, educating, enlightening about the disease. You had a brother who was from the Houston chapter who came to work in the Bay Area, and he had been ill all his life, didn't know what it was. And then he took the sickle cell test while he was here, like it required for all Panthers to take it as well. And he found out that's what he had. He had the sickle cell. Yeah. Germ warfare declares against Blacks. This is the Tuskegee experiment, the syphilis experiment. I believe it was 1939, somewhere around in there, that they gave these Black sharecroppers $50 each to be in this this experiment. $50 is a lot of money, so they took the money. I think it was 1947, around there, they had a cure for syphilis, which was penicillin. But they did not give the Black sharecroppers the penicillin. They kept them in the study up, and it was in 1972 when you had the mainstream paper was resisting publishing this information in the main paper, in the daily papers. So you had these investigative reporters who we knew gave the information to us and other alternative press. And that we started publishing in our papers, that's when they exposed and acknowledged that the study was tested, the Blacks were still in this test in 1972. And that's when it stopped in 1972. And this paper here is August 5th, 1972. Thanks to the People's Free Store, I can go home and mop my floor and feed my children. Again, combination of things. This is when Bobby Seale, Eric Huggins were incarcerated in New Haven. So we're playing off two things here, the image of what they're symbolically about, why the repression against them is because we're exposing and pointing out the contradictions, what the government should have been doing to help those in need and weren't doing. We also had SAFE, Seniors Gets a Fearful Environment. That was a seniors program where we used to take them and pick them up from the satellite houses, take them shopping, take them to the banks to cash their checks, the whole bit. And they had to, at the city council, they were voting on spending $54,000 on a helicopter to patrol crime. And we said, why should Oakland spend $54,000 on a helicopter when we need funds for seniors against the fearful environment? And then we're saying that if they really want to deal with crime, they would take that $54,000 and invest it in the young people to take the seniors shopping, take them to cash their checks and do the things they want to do. That way you cutting into crime, but not by patrolling with Gestapo controls or with the helicopters. And crime continues to fester. We also had programs where they would come to our school, became a cultural center in the evenings, and they would have bingo and all the play different games they would play. They'd make lists of the kind of produce and foods that they needed. We would go get them donated, they come back and pick all those things up for free. And that was I was on a weekly basis as well. And they used to hold a Sunday program, seniors program, every 3 or 4 about their celebration of who they were. And there's a young lady named Arlene who was in the Panthers, 15 years old, was the one who was the coordinator of this program. Hypertension kills. I'm hungry, I'm unemployed, I'm Black. Today's news, question mark. Down with exploitation, give me all my money. This is when Ronald Reagan was cutting back on the security, I think the welfare money that families were getting. Here again is early days with a button of Erica, Huggins, and Bobby, and it's the People's button with the People's Free Health Clinics.
Yeah, you know, just going back to Reagan, Reagan basically was instituting hardcore poverty at a time in which there had been a few government benefits coming from the New Deal. So neoliberalism, Reagan really brings it in full throat, and he is cutting back on substantially the money for low-income housing. As governor, he had eliminated any kind of programs for the mentally ill. And he had come up with, through the Hoover Institute program, America in the 1980s, the statement that ketchup was a vegetable, that people could eat ketchup and survive. And he was into union busting. And so when you see the real decline in the number or the percentage of people who are in unions in this country down to about 10%. Reagan's the one that carries it out full throat. And this is a guy that didn't know up from down. He was a cipher. When you went into a meeting, he didn't know what was going on. He was programmed. He had a cue card for everything he did, but they loved him. The rich loved him. And he became the model, not only for the Republican Party, but for the New Democrats. Bill Clinton picked that model up and ended welfare. So this is some serious stuff right here.
Here's the Cuban artists used to, back in the day, used to remix about 4 or 5 of my posters and interpret them to, made them into these amazing, beautiful posters. But then you had a lot of the activists who used to go there to work with sugarcane brigades back then, and to help with the sugarcane crops. And used to think that, some of them used to think that I was copying the Cuban art a lot. But here's to show you the sample. Here are the 2 images. These images I did when I was initially transitioning into the Black Panther Party from the Black Arts Movement. But these are the 2 images that they remixed and reinterpreted. This one is this one, and they put the gun over there, and this is this one here, and cropped into this amazing poster. So that, you know, back
so Black art in Cuba was influenced by your art.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a statement.
Yeah. And this is another poster that they did using this artwork. This image was about this size inside in the interior of the paper. So that we knew that they were reading the paper and getting the paper, because they made this poster in 1968, saying solidarity with the African American people, August 18, 1968. And it supports different languages, I think Spanish, Portuguese, and Arab.
Now, what this is showing, Emory, is that our culture is the culture of popular choice in the world. It's also showing, your art is one example of it, but our political movements, which you're expressing on other levels as well, our movements trigger chain reactions around the world. They trigger chain reactions here, but they also trigger chain reactions around the world. And what do they say? Imitation is the highest compliment. And in this particular case, when it's imitations of liberation, that's a real high compliment, you know? Right on.
Okay. Here again is another one, Afro-American Solidarity, when you're showing our solidarity with people, oppressed people around the world. Afro-American Solidarity with the oppressed people around the world. This was 1969. Here's one saying, listen to them pigs begging on my door, asking me for some rent money. They should be paying my rent. So it's another layer that gives enlightens you and informs you about the artwork itself. Here's about Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, brothers who were assassinated in Chicago. The film that was recently made about the Fred Hampton. So this was the initial poster that was in the paper. This is the other one I did as well. He says, you can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail the revolution. You can run a freedom fighter around the country, but you can't run freedom fighting around the country. You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation.
Yeah, Fred Hampton, one beautiful brother there.
And this was Halloween, came around. I said, let me just on Halloween. And I came up just when Nixon and Spiro Agnew were, Nixon was the president, Spiro Agnew was the vice president. And it says, trick or treat, pigs, trick or treat. And Babylon, and this, now, both of them had to leave office in disgrace. Nixon was about to be impeached. Spiro Agnew had his vice president had to leave because he was corrupt, criminal, and was exposed because of the politics of the other side. And so you had, just like, oh, you got criminals running the government.
And it was a black guard, a security guard that uncovered Watergate.
Yes, that's right, yes.
that put Nixon out of the White House. Unfortunately, he didn't go to the jailhouse. And when Nixon was first elected, he said, blacks didn't vote for me and I owe them nothing.
Yeah. And I think that started when he came out to California and he was on Fillmore and blacks booed him and didn't show. It came out when that time, when he was running for governor, I believe it was, about running for president.
Now, what's funny is Nixon was at Ghana's independence celebrations along with Martin Luther King. And he was vice president then under Eisenhower. So when it came to King deciding, and his father and SCLC, whether they would support Kennedy or Nixon, for a long time, King was more inclined towards Nixon, not because he particularly liked him, but because Kennedy had done absolutely nothing for black people. So when King is encouraged by the students to go to jail, and then both candidacies, both people in both campaigns, the Nixon and Kennedy campaign, are both talking about what should they do. So Kennedy's people advised him to at least put in a call to King's wife, which he does, voicing sympathy. And as a result, King's father ends up standing up on the pedestals and saying, we should vote for Kennedy. Kennedy won by 200,000 votes. That was the black vote. But he also won, the mafia vote was also 200,000 coming out of Chicago. But the key point is that Nixon wouldn't make the call. Nixon had a meeting with the head of the NAACP, Roy Wilkins. And when he left the meeting, he meets with his chief of staff, Haldeman, and he says, because he was what you call an intelligent racist. He read, but he was just as dumb as anybody that had it. He said, black people have made no contributions to civilization. And he's one of the biggest savages going, we give birth to civilization. So old tricky dick.
And the one to the right is we want to end to the robbery by the capitalists of our black community. We want to oppose to those who want to celebrate Christmas. We're exposed to the exploitation of the holiday, how it was being marketed to empower poor people to go out and spend money under the illusion of happiness and for the kids and the family and loved ones, and then go into debt for the next of their lives or for long times, what have you. Because, there were those who sold Christmas trees, those vendors, used to give them to us almost maybe a week or two before the holiday, and we give them away to the community. We got photographs showing tons of them where we just give them away because people, celebrate the holiday, and they will come get them. Here's the one that says, I wonder if Nixon is bugging us now. And the little kids are sitting on the potty pot. Then I played it again because it came up. I did it too. I wonder if it was Nixon, then it was Obama, then Trump, spying on us now. Because what happened is that, and I say that, spying on us now, because when the sister who was the president of Brazil, when she came here to visit with and Obama, and they had in the press conference, was on the news, and they asked, was the United States spying on them because there's all this spy scandals coming out. And the United States, no, we never spy on our friends and our allies and whatever. No. A week later, it came out that they had been spying on Brazil over the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And they got a court. They got a private court where they can go get an injunction to spy. It's called the United States Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court.
Right. And
there's, I think there's one of the Supreme Court members become the one of the judge at that private court that nobody really knows about, And I think they only turn out a handful of hundreds of petitions to spy on people.
Yeah.
This is, it says, I, Gerald Ford, am the 38th puppet of the United States. as we see and we do now, corporate entities control all this.
Yeah, that's who runs the presidency.
There was a corporate prophet, as Nixon, wanted to be King Nixon. You know, all that going up. Consumer buying power going down. Same thing at the time with Trump, same thing. So he wanted to be King Trump. Called it class brothers, Hitler, Nixon. This conspiracy to destroy the Black Panther Party, COINTELPRO, Counterintelligence Program, the acronym. And by any means necessary, I think spent over about $20–30 million, that was a lot of money at that time, to destroy and discredit the Black Panther Party by any means necessary. Here's one of the initial drawings that I got from, I think it's the Berkeley Barb, or one of the Berkeley papers recently, that shows the illustration where they had this plan from the Berkeley police to come in and destroy the party, block off the streets, bring in bombs, all that, blocked out the dead. And so this was a part of the illustration. When the Berkeley police held a press conference the next day, they said, well, that was just the plan, but not the whole plan. Here it is showing the plan. This was right across, when our office used to be right across the street from La Pena on Shattuck in Berkeley. Right across the Shattuck, La Pena was right here. This was the headquarters right here. And this is this is the plan, what they were going to do. You know, they're gonna have patrolmen, shotguns here, police block Shattuck at Prince Roosley. They were gonna be terrorizing, meaning they was gonna terrorize whoever if that happened. And from the office, they was gonna have them right here to terrorize. And then B squads were gonna be over here, patrolmen, shotguns, rifles, all this patrolmen over here. This is the whole plan that they had. And this is the earlier plan. This is late 1968. Yeah, around that time. Here again is the transcript of the assault plan. So I won't go into it, but this is basically it.
Yeah, you know, the FBI was harder than the CIA was on Russia. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. In other words, the amount of murder and mayhem that they created in every other kind of attack, some of that they wouldn't reserve for their foreign enemies.
Yeah, that's right. It's about my brother who may have had some loved one incarcerated. It says, my suffering, my bitterness, my loneliness, I'm not going to let it get me down. I'm not going to let it turn me around. So I did this collage. These two pictures look alike, but these are two different pictures from two different publications, totally divorced. But that's when I was talking about, when I look at those black books and what have you, and I recall, I know how to how to go in my files or go to it if I want to bring something together, collage it in with the as a reference for the art graphic that I may have done during that time. This one was done for the Solidarity brothers, John Clochette and George Jackson, and Cleaver Drumgrow. They had the buttons on. But it's the same thing as why must Black people look at each other through prison bars, where is our freedom? The brothers and sisters may be locked up in maximum security, but the families are like almost in minimum security in that context.
Yeah.
Here again is political prisoners, U.S. fascism. There was Bobby left, you to the right. Free the New York 21 and all political prisoners. That's when the Panther New York 21 were trumped up charges of blowing up statues, parks, and all kinds of stuff. Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mom, was a part of the New York 21. She defended herself in the trial. But making sure, long story short, is that they eventually went to court, I think with less than 4 hours. They're found not guilty of all charges during that time. Because, and all this was beginning to use all these trumped up cases so that we be tied up in the courts as opposed to spending our time in the community organizing. So that was one of the strategies that they were using then. Free Angela. We supported Angela. Angela was the one who, I believe, when she was doing love letters and when Huey got shot and went to San Quentin when the police got killed, George Jackson got a note to him, message that he wanted to start the chapter of the Black Panther Party in San Quentin. And that's when that became our first chapter inside of the prison, was in San Quentin prison. And so George Jackson lives, was the spirit of when he was murdered in the Adjustment Center.
George Jackson was brilliant,
Mm-hmm.
well as a brave freedom fighter, brilliant.
Mm-hmm. This is called Kidnapped. This is 1968, prior to Bobby, when Bobby came back from speaking at the Democratic Convention, to the rallies and protests that took place outside. That was when that major brutalization took place by the police in Chicago, the protesters. When Bobby came back, he was charged with inciting to riot, but didn't know that. I remember we was at our office on Shattuck, that same office that I showed the diagram of. And I came in that day and was there saying, looking outside, it says, look kind of strange. We knew something, but couldn't figure out what it was. But seen two old folks were sitting in the car across the street. Then you see a guy go up on the telephone pole. Then we all there, Bobby, and we leave that night, 2 cars. Bobby's in one car, I'm in another car with some other comrades. We go to the filling station about 2 blocks away on the corner of Ashley and Shattuck. All of a sudden you had the feds swoop down on us with machine guns. And they snatched Bobby out the car. At that time, we were able to get in contact with our lawyers to find out that they took him to the federal building in San Francisco. Then they shipped him back to Chicago, claiming that he incited to riot at the Democratic Convention, which is not true. So then while he was there, then he had to stand trial. When he was on trial, I didn't want to do an illustration of the trial, but what it was representing symbolically. About this right-wing racist judge out of retirement to be the judge. During the hearing, Bobby Seale's lawyer, Charles Gary, had to have a minor, I think, surgery. But Bobby wanted to defend himself and speak for himself. Then they say he couldn't do that. But every time his name was brought up in the court, he would stand up and object in court until they gagged him and chained him to a chair in the courtroom. Instead of taking him out, they gagged him and chained him in the courtroom. And then this is the second time this had been done. The second time was done was to the Angola 3, the 3 Panthers who were in Angola penitentiary in New Orleans. They did the same thing to them. So I said, this is an unarmed people are slaves or subject to slavery at any given time. And I call it Dred Scott, 1857, Bobby Seale, 1969. And the black man has no rights that a white racist political system is bound to respect. Here again is, you knew what it was, they were trying to. And then he was sent off to New Haven, Connecticut, and that's when he was set up for the framing by the agent provocateurs who murdered the 2 Panthers in New Haven. And he and Eric was standing, was facing the lectureship. So I did this image. I found this image of this guy who was in the 1930s who was in the lectureship. And so what I did is I found a picture of Bobby facing the same way. And I placed it on Bobby, placed Bobby like this and took all the tones out because this is what they were trying to do. Huey Newton didn't like it because he said it was too real. But Bobby thought it brought a lot of attention to what the reality that they were trying to do. I remember in the courtroom during the proceedings when I went back there with David Hilliard and they had a recess. And they said, okay, everybody out, you can sit in here. We were just sitting there. Nobody's in the court but me and David. And we had a paper, reading the paper. And the bailiff come over and say, y'all can't read the paper in the courtroom. And snatched it out of our hand. And we snatched it back. And we got arrested for that while we was there. And when they took us to the jail, you can see this was mafia. When they took us out of the courthouse jail to take us to the jail, to the prison, you had machine guns for a whole block and a half on all corners as they were taking us out. Yeah. The pre-trial motions are just the beginning of the fascist conspiracy against Bobby Seale and Erica Hutt. This one here is Hallelujah, the might and the power of the people was beginning to show. This was in relationship to when Erica and Bobby were found exonerated of all the charges, and agent provocateurs were found guilty, and they were released from prison. So this image reflected that. This one is here was showing our solidarity with the original caretakers of the land here, the American Indians, who are our allies and friends. And the American Indian movement acknowledges it started because of the Black Panther, it was inspired by and started because of the Black Panther Party. This is going into the more recent historical, newer ones, remixes and what have you. This is a more recent Panther that I've done, image. I call this Malcolm X, the warrior. This is Malcolm X, the father figure, and Dr. King, the dignitary, both revolutionary. Here, brothers and sisters with sharecroppers of our elders and family. I remember here in the state when my uncles and my aunties used to work in a small town like Fresno and Dallas Palace and Paso Robles as handyman and doing floors and other whatever needs to be done to make a living. I recall when back in the day that when they used to have the buses come through Fillmore and Hunters Point to take blacks who wanted to get on to go to pick the fruits and stuff, and the young people to make money for to pay the bills or what have you. All during that time. There used to be in Fresno, I'm North Carolina all the time. There was a cotton field right across the street from where my family, extended family, and family lived at. And they'd have a bathroom, had an outhouse. This is in the 1950s, going into the early 1960s. Here's this, these I highlighted this brother and this sister, brother and sister. This brother here used to come get his paper every day, but he would be slushed. He would still come get his paper, not every day, but every week. And so I wanted to highlight him, you know, and says all power to the people, you know, about global warming, making the paper more relevant to the day in that context. Yeah. But this sister, she used to live in back of us. And she would sit out there and get her paper every week and read her paper. Just sit out there and read her paper. Yeah. Here again is Respect Mother Earth, SOS Global Warming, Today's News, Justice Resists Unjust Laws.
You know, in the San Francisco Freedom Movement, sometimes it was the alcoholics that was telling us who was slipping into a police car and talking to the police. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Here we are living in the land of plenty while we the people starve. We had the People's Free Food Program, basket groceries, West. I put the collage on it with Panther symbolizing our free food giveaway. Some chapters could give away more than others. I think the height we gave away is 10,000 bags of groceries at one time. Yeah. This one, don't support the greedy, support the needy.
And today, a whole lot of Black people, poor people are hungry. Whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
Country that's got food stored doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. Because this is a war economy. There was all $50 trillion billions of dollars going to the war account.
Right.
Here again is reinterpreting a picture dealing with the fossil fuel issues of global warming, and the fracking and all those things that go into that, and the toxic waste that's leaving behind, that's causing the global warming and problems, and the floodings, and all the things that take the heating, the fires, all the things in the magnitude that they're happening at this time. Yeah. And as I try to put symbols on it, like danger and the globe, and over here love the globe, but saying fossil fuel with the danger symbol there, and mother with in the background. Here's one: educate to liberate. Here's one showing the People's Free Health Survival Pending Revolution. The People's Free Health Clinics. It says, I am a revolutionary, and free breakfast for children served here Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The People's Free Food Program, the free clothing program, all these things, free shoe giveaway, all these things. And what's the saving? We have ambulance service. The ambulance wouldn't come into the community. That was our first chapter in the South. The ambulance wouldn't come into the community in a timely fashion or at all. So the Panthers wouldn't got certified, and the community helped them buy an ambulance. And so we had the Black Panther Party ambulance service in Winston-Salem. And having an ambulance service, you're taking people back and forth. They talking about other concerns that you get to understand the needs for, that are not, that they have no access to or needs or what have you.
What community was that in where you had
Winston-Salem, North Carolina. They still got a school. We got alternative school goes down there from preschool all up that we started, that the community run, goes up to 12th grade. Got almost two campuses to it. And in Chicago, we had the free busing prisons all over the country. But in Chicago, they gave them a bus almost like a Greyhound bus, but it had something else on it where they took the all that off and put the free busing to prison program on it. And that became one of our primary sources of letting people know each week in announcements and flyers that we were going to certain prisons, wherever state we had these programs, that to meet there, they could get a free ride to the prison, to and from the prison. So we had the free busing to prison for those who were going to see loved ones who were incarcerated and what have you. Then we had the school. We had our liberation schools, then we had the Oakland Community School that started in Oakland. Then I did this one here called Turtle Island, North America Indigenous Territory. It's showing like the kids talking with each other. With the little technical in hand and science kind of gadgets.
Kind of subtle there.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. This is the first one. This was in black and white, and I remixed it with color, health as well. Then I did this one about 4 or 5 years ago. This was called Health as Well, and they're both talking. She said, "I like this saying." He says, "Yeah, it's non-toxic." And so you can play off of that in the context.
Mr. LaShonda Henderson has a question. When the Panthers in Winston-Salem created their ambulances, did the hospitals receive them?
Yeah. I'm quite sure they did. I never thought to ask that, but yeah, there was never we never wrote anything about that. So I'm assuming that's what they did accept them, you know what I mean? Because they were a service and they were taking them to the thing. But now what happened, they had their anniversary, I think it was about 5 years ago or less, that I went and others went. And they said they had the sons and daughters of the racists who they were in confrontation. There was some serious confrontation down there at times. coming and acknowledging and apologizing for their elders' racist behavior and attitude towards the Panthers during that time. Who came? These are the sons and daughters of the. They also now have a plaque on one of the main streets with a pole that said the Black Panther Party was here, and all listen to different programs of what happened.
So this was in Winston-Salem where the sons and daughters came to apologize?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it blew the mind. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one I did initially. I did it with Kaepernick to honor Kaepernick and his protests against racism and the national anthem and being a racist and military. And saying, I am we, the African proverb, I am because you are. This one here was, I had initially had one, but I couldn't find it, where I had, for a brief time, I put Serena on that one, her name. And that was because of the fact that when she was at Wimbledon, how the racists over there were belittling her beauty and her style of dress and all those things, compared to those who were similar, who were white. And so this is,
they were protesting her pride.
Yes, that's right.
Not just her blackness, her pride, because her daddy and mother taught her the hell with what they think.
Yeah. And this one is Little People Against Colonialism. Reinterpretation. Here again is dealing with the collage put together with photo elements and actual art, my artwork, working all this. And this is one who says, I'm food insecure. Another button says, I'm homeless.
Yeah, it's funny how they call it food insecure when they're starving.
Yes.
People have a way, the government system, of minimizing oppression.
Yeah.
Food insecure, my ass. Let you be food insecure. You'd be blowing up the supermarkets, stealing food. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right. Here's one where we had one of our anniversary, I think it was the 45th year. It says Black Panther Party, October 1966 to 1982. Serving the community, body and soul. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. And there's this collage, as you see the ambulance, you see the busing, the prison program, the free food giveaway, the alternative schools, seniors programs. We have doctors and nurses who came in and contributed to our clinics and what have you, alternative schools, and we're in solidarity with political prisoners. And we had those who were political prisoners. So this was kind of a collage that was used as the poster for that particular anniversary celebration.
Emory, about how long did those survival programs last? From when to when? About how long?
Oh, they went on for up until the late 70s. But always was, the idea was they would survival program was to be inspired communities to begin to take up those programs and implement them themselves. That was the whole idea of Panther to negate itself from doing it as much as it could. But of course, the urgency and under the pressure and stuff that we're under, I think that it was about the late 70s that we began to not have any more of the programs that existed.
About what year did they start?
Well, the school, the alternative school always lasted until the end. And out of the school, many things came out of the school thereafter.
Now, what year were the survival programs launched?
The first one, they were at different times.
Right.
I think the breakfast program was 1967. You had the free breakfast for kids in the morning. Those started in 1967. Also, I think we also had to gave some free food bags, food away, groceries and stuff. Yeah, I think and maybe late 1967 or 1968, the beginning of that. Yeah, and the health clinics. This is called Mother's Love.
Nice. real nice.
And that's father's love.
Now, let me make a comment here.
Mhm.
All that you've seen of Emory's work so far is a certain kind of art that is projecting revolutionary messages. And some of you could call it like comic art. But what you're seeing here is in the depiction of the faces and stuff, and I saw it also in your portrayal of Malcolm, this here of the mother and the child, you're not only showing the emotion and stuff, but and the beautiful way in which the hair is done. But what you're showing is there's a hidden thing here. Some artists can only do the comic stuff that Emory was showing you. Some, that's all they can do. But Emory has got this range. And in the picture that you had of Malcolm, it's an example. But here, I'd say that part of what's happening here, I'm not an artist, this is just what I'm saying, is that there's a symbolism that you're depicting in there. And you can see it, it's a symbolism of love. You conveyed emotion in this painting and beauty, real beauty. But there's something else you do. And it's like the painting that you showed of Malcolm earlier. I have it here that you gave me as one of those as a birthday present. You're also a magnificent portrait artist, but you're able to do something else. You're able to catch the symbolism in it. So when you want to, and all of this is an example, and this is one, you could take a real human being, you could capture them exactly the way they are, but then you have this symbolic stuff that you're able to do. And that's taking art to another level, And here, you're capturing feeling, emotion, beauty. It's magnificent, brother.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
And here, yeah. And how many brothers you see look like that? And I don't mean exactly like that. How many you see look like that? Same thing with the son or daughter. How many you see look like that? No, not exactly like that. You're capturing an essence here of Black love. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And then those eyes.
Here's one I did. This one, I start with this one. This was with, I was the linoleum block cutting, was about with this book company that does these small book projects. And they had different artists they wanted. It's over around, I can't think of the name of it, but it's around over there off of 16th and below Portrayal, for Black Road Portrayal Street. And they asked me to be a part of it. And it was 40 by 60, I think, inches, feet in size, and had to carve it out. And they picked it up back about 4 or 5 years ago. And then I remixed it on this one, interpret this one in the art form, in the graphic form. They had to bring the big linoleum blocks from the big steamrollers they inked it on the street because they had blocked off the street. And then they had to bring the steamrollers and roll and put the paper and roll the steamroller over in order to complete them. Yeah.
There's a question here from Malika Kambone. Where can I find part 1 and 2 of this series? When you go to the Dr. Obitashaka show page, and it has all these shows, we've done about 90 of them, you will see up close to the top, Emory Douglas, Black Panther Party 1, Black Panther Party 2, you'll see them. And what I want to say to those of you who are new, make sure that you subscribe. You see them, watch them, but also subscribe. But you're going to get stuff in here that there are nuances in the show. I mean, for example, that can only come from somebody who was active in the movement. And so when Emory was talking about the relationship between Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, I've not read that in any book where he talked about Huey talking about, well, when it came to the public, Bobby, you do that. You know what I mean? Because Huey had his own talent. There was nuances like that. And you also, I think you mentioned that it was Bobby Seale. I think this is known. Bobby was the one that came up with the idea for the newspaper, wasn't he?
Well, I think they both had the idea for the paper, but Bobby was the one who was laying out the paper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that first flyer, because the one I started doing the pre-press and designing for was that second one, the first tabloid.
And then your little point that I seen brought out in a notebook before the newspaper came out, you took it to DC, Donald Cox, who had been chair of the education, the public relations committee in C.O.R.E when I chaired it. He was a stickler for grammar, because I sent some stuff to him in France and he would have some comments sometimes on the grammar. You know what I mean? So those are little fine points, but that's telling you more than a little detail. It's telling you something about how the people approach things, you know, or organize them, you know, which you get from firsthand experience.
And here's we're using words just as figures, spell the word reparations, and also using this symbol here, the Adinkra symbol, by justice, you are a slave for him whose handcuffs you wear. So this image is at the MoMA, Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco.
Okay, right on.
Part of the Diego Rivera mural.
Right.
They have there that were out of City College. And because I had went to City College, I had also the teachers found out that I was included because I was there. And they came down, I did a workshop with the students in relationship to the process. How I put things together back then.
And Diego Rivera was a great muralist.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
This is where it's at on this wall here. This is that museum itself.
Beautiful.
This is about 32 feet by 16 feet. Yeah, and it had 4 women who worked on it.
Right on. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
So it'll be there, I think, up until November. I think they're gonna have the opening on the 9th of the Diego Rivera, because there's a lot of different murals that are connected with the whole division highlight behind him. Here's the one showing the remix of the one from the 1969, 67, 68, 66, 68. Excuse me, 66, 67. This is more remixing.
And who did this one?
I did both of these. Yeah, this is the original one I did. Then this is the one that I remixed the original.
Okay, right on. Yeah.
Here's one I remixed using one of the photographs of a young brother Panther who was looking at the baby. We interpreted for Father's Day this year. It says Black Lives Matter. Call this one Warrior Woman.
Right on.
No where he looked. He looked left, looked right. He was lying. No matter what. He was a fascist xenophobe.
Got that right.
Yeah.
With over 70 million voting followers.
Yeah. That's dangerous. Yeah. This is again immigration, white only.
Right on.
Yeah. This is another was a woodcut. This is about 8 feet by about 4 feet. And it was justice, resist unjust laws. Yeah. Still, also was in combination with Fabiana Rodriguez, Latino artists who put the whole group collected together for this one. And this was about immigration. This is when they was taking taking families and separating them from the kids, from the mothers and fathers.
Right.
It's still like that now. Right. This is ice cold wickedness made in the USA. Here you got mama, mommy, mama, papa, poppy.
Yeah, this is a system of making life miserable.
Yes.
And this has a history to it, because
Mhm.
there's a period where people didn't live in these conditions.
That's right.
There's a period where people lived good lives, happy
Mhm.
lives,
Mhm.
thousands of years of it. And then this system comes in. You
Mhm.
understand? A system of misery. And anybody that identifies with this system, they either have to be the very few that are benefiting and don't care, or they have to be cold-blooded and heartless, sometimes stupid, but in most cases fooled, brainwashed to think that can't be no better place than this, right?
Mhm.
In other
Yeah.
words, is there a place more miserable? That's about all they're competing for.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
This is the one when the
Yeah.
Haitians.
The Haitians.
Yeah.
We
They
talked
were at
about
the border
last,
down there in Texas.
yeah,
They were whooping them and dragging them.
20,000 of them deported by Biden. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? 20,000. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And those are the baddest people, among the baddest in the world. By baddest, I mean best. I take African American culture
Mhm.
as one of the strongest cultures in the world. In the Western Hemisphere, second to Haiti. Why?
Mhm.
Only people in history freed themselves from enslavement and are still fighting. And this country is driving them into misery.
Yes.
Our direction should be hands off Haiti. Let the
Mhm.
Haitians do for themselves. I was reading an issue of Architectural Digest, and some of these rich people got together and they built 100 homes for Haitians, 100. They're real small. They're all together. They're in a little valley area, 100, you know what I mean? And real small. But the point is, the Haitians are living without housing, without medical care, without food. The American occupation did them in. The whole reparations imposed by the French did them in to make them pay for beating the French. Who pays for their freedom? You know what I mean? And every government of this country has been hostile to the Haitian. Black people need to stand up for them, support them, let them run their own country. They can handle their own stuff. You hear me?
Yeah. This is when Trump called the all the black countries and third world countries shithole
Yeah,
countries.
shitholes.
Yeah, I call him the shithole president.
Yeah. who tries to make shitholes for everybody.
Yes,
You know what I
that's
mean?
right.
And
Mhm.
whose father made money off of all this racism, you know, and his own housing policies and everything else.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This one says, the top one says, Arab, Muslim, Islam, U.S. government's coded word for terrorist hate, discrimination, black male, U.S. government's coded word for hate, discriminate, kill.
Mhm. True.
Here's two that I did. I'll reinterpret this one again for a solidarity exhibition coming up in Chinatown, where related on the Bandung conference when blacks
Right.
and Asians came together. And so they were doing it, wanted me to be a part of the exhibit. And I reinterpret this in a more aesthetic way. This is, you know, and it says Afro-American solidarity with the Asian community. Then this was the first interpretation of one for in solidarity with the Palestinian struggle. Hashtag boycott, divest, sanction, down with apartheid.
Mhm. Yeah, beautiful.
And here again, because of the threats and all the stuff they're making against scholars and all those who are in the institutions who were supporting the Palestinian struggle for rights. So I want to play it off the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. So Amendment 1 to the Constitution of the United States of America, freedom of religion, speech, and the press, right of assembly and petition. Playing off of that, you know, in the context of this boycott, divest, sanction, down with apartheid.
Mhm.
Peace heals, war kills.
Right on.
Here's figures war. And this was a symbol that the Bantu art I seen in this book I have on the African alphabet.
Right.
And the Bantu symbol, when it goes, red goes, that's like war. Or if it's going in the same direction, it would be like harmony. And so, but this is dealing with war and that's taking place in the world. This is what war does to human beings, psychological impact that we don't see every day. Millions of people still being destroyed by landmines over in Africa, Asia, and wherever they are, by landmines, pollution, and the byproducts of what is causing health-wise to the environment. All this thing plays into the most polluters in the world is the military. Here again was when Obama got the Nobel Prize. And when he got the Nobel Prize, he didn't give a peace speech. He gave a war speech. So that made him a Nobel fraud. Obama was the one who signed the kill bill. They gave them the right to, if they felt somebody threat, whether they were terrorists or not, they would assassinate. They assassinated this well-known Muslim who everybody said wasn't a terrorist. Then they came back and killed his 13-year-old son.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's the one signed the kill bill. Yeah.
Right.
But not only that, the thing about it is that those young, and I think it's on the coast where you had the pirates had no options but to go out and take them ships because the ships were coming and pollute the water and leaving toxins and was killing the fish and everything else in the water. So they started to hold those ships up and for ransom and what have you. But Obama was the first one to kill some of the youngsters. Now this is called Crimes Against Humanity. This is about Yemen. I had been reading about it, checking on it, and it was the British and the US. The British were supporting the US, but made in America. They were saying at the time that they had nothing to do with it. They weren't supporting, they had nothing to do with it. And it finally came to the point where they had to acknowledge, the US had to acknowledge that it was supplying the military equipment to Saudi Arabia that was being used on the people in Yemen. So it was crimes against humanity. Millions of food insecurity, millions displaced, thousands injured, humanitarian import blockade, thousands dead, water shortage. And this shows Yemen kind of like showing it.
In fact, Obama allowed Yemen to go, allowed the Saudis to bomb, so they would be silent or back off of opposing what he was imposing on Iran. Because the Saudis see the Iranians as enemies. And so to kind of quiet them, he let that go down. And so huge amount of Yemeni people, babies and women, and children, everybody else has died.
And they still die. But now their resistance is coming stronger to that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Higher Hecka here has a question. Do Palestinians have sympathy for our plight?
Yes, they do. When you ask her, you want to speak to her?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, they do. I was a part of a delegation that went to Palestine about 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, and we met with some of the Blacks who were part of the Palestinians who were part of the movement over there. The only way they got out of prison was the prison exchange. And we went to the African quarters there and met with the brothers who had generations of family from Chad and Sudan and other places who were there. Yeah.
Yeah, the Palestinians were among the first to support the cause for Black Lives Matter in this country when it first kicks off in Ferguson. They're among the first groups to stand up and oppose police violence against Black people.
In spite of what the politics and things are now in context to Arafat, but in 1969, that was the first meeting we had with Arafat was in Algeria when he was there for a conference, symposium. And they worked it out for us to meet with him. Yeah. Therefore, we met on several occasions and went to a press conference where they were giving a press conference or what have you. This is Joe Biden, and now warmongering. When you spend $54 billion on that's warmongering, manufactured in America.
Yeah, Biden's never seen a war he didn't like.
That's right. Yeah.
And,
yeah. He pushed Obama.
yeah.
He's the vice president. Yeah.
Yeah. And all the money that they're putting out for war right now in this Russian-inspired stuff. But at the same time, when it comes to really addressing the needs of the people here, while he had an infrastructure bill that got stopped by the moderates in his party, he's also stopped himself by not getting out of this senatorial mindset that he needs to observe the practices of the Senate, so that the filibuster he came in talking about, he supported, and now he's talking about under modified circumstances.
Yeah.
The filibuster has always supported racism.
And
so even though you could blame two moderate Democrats for holding up a lot of stuff in the Senate, the reality is he didn't come in full-throated with a view that he had to take a position where if he could get just a bare majority through the Senate, that's what he'd do. That would mean going against the filibuster. And it also mean cutting down on the war economy. He has also been increasing the defense budget, you know. And what president has said, God bless the troops? I mean, I hear them all saying, God bless America. And the question is why? Why would God bless America? You know what I mean? But God bless the troops? Give me a break. And has this guy ever served a minute in the military? Hell no. Hell no.
Yeah. I when he was running for, I made a comparison between him and Trump. I said, Trump was like a wild man. He wanted to take the chicken, break his neck and suck the blood out. Where Biden wanted to sit at the table with a glass of wine and have a rare steak and a napkin, you know. That's the only difference. This is the way they go, how they move about things.
Yeah, and because Trump is a nationalist, he's taken a position generally on foreign policy that America shouldn't be involved, you know. The America First program is not because he's anti-war. It's because he's more anti getting engaged in the world. But Biden is very much about engagement and very supportive of war. And that has always been a reality with him.
Here's the ones, first one to the left is Spike Lee. Like that image that I showed earlier on several occasions with Claude in the cap, hat, and whatever, Frigid eyes. When he was doing the film, when he was doing the film on The Five Bloods. And so I collaborated with the art director, Kenny Gavalis, and designed this poster for his personal poster. It was also used as one of the online posters for the PR for the film. Also, this one is for Kenny Gavalis, also a brother who is a designer, again, who worked with Spike, but also worked on this film, Judas and the Black Messiah. And they wanted me to redesign the Fred Hampton poster with the actual actor who won the Academy Award for this film. And so this is him. So they gave me the different images I had to put together and give it the feel of the Fred Hampton, the original Fred Hampton poster.
Nice. Yeah, you captured the spirit there. You know? Yeah, nice.
Here's about global warming. This one, I got one that says Black Lives Matter, but this one says respect Mother Earth. Because Black love sunshine, love the fresh air, the beauty of flowers, all those things. Yeah, same thing. He's kind of dealing with that. A new interpretation of the one I did earlier. He's dealing with global warming. Issues of global warming.
The blues for global warming.
Yes.
Well, what this is saying is the Western paradigm is dead, literally dead, and has brought the planet to the verge of extinction. And so it's not enough to just lower the temperature and, to do all the little technical things, but this whole view of the world that has waged war on nature, waged war on humanity, waged war on the cosmos, waged war on everything. It's that view, that world view that's got to go down, along with the measures that have to be taken to save the planet. That's the biggest thing. A mind transplant has to take place. And that's a revolutionary act. And this is saying it right here.
Again, Mother Earth, this is the doomsday clock. Getting closer and closer to no reversing the situation as it is in reality or what exists today.
And the corporations are saying, because they have a saying in corporate America, remember, we won't be here, because each corporate head gets their buyout package. So they're all saying, let it heat up, let the ice melt, let the storms come, because out of that, we'll make more money. Don't worry, we won't be here. Well, that means they don't care about their children and grandchildren, only about their wealth and power.
Here's one with this. This is the young sister from Uganda, Vanessa Naki. She's she's an environmental social justice activist. When her allies, compatriots, young from Europe, they all took this photograph, and they blocked her out the photograph. It was a national one all over the world, and they blocked her out and played up. The press played up the young European girls, which they weren't a party to it. They acknowledged and supported her, but the press did. And that reminded me again of Bob Dimmitt, who became the first the first black fire chief of San Francisco, when I think he was a captain in the fire department, when they took their yearly photograph picture, and they blocked him out the picture, like he didn't even exist. So I was just playing off of that with this one, and salute to her in that context. And this was saying, dare to struggle, dare to win. Here again is one I did with the San Francisco Art Council. They want to use this image of the paper boy again, but and so they wanted me to create this, and I did. This is like a two-dimensional. This here I had to take this to look to a creative place where they did the cutout of this and glued it onto the back of the red with the circle in the background. So it gives a kind of depth feeling to it. This was about 10 feet, and they were going to use it at a park, but what happened is that the COVID kicked in at that time.
That's beautiful.
Just, from Mother Earth, saying like the mountains, the sky, the trees, all that. Water, respect Mother Earth. And this one is done with Haiti, what I had did a while ago, and they also used it on their cover. This is when the UN troops were there, and they feasted in the water and called the Cholera Epidemic. We had over 10,000 more Haitians who died, hundreds of thousands got sick, and the UN was acknowledging their part in that for a long time.
And did nothing about it.
Yes, did nothing about it, yes. This is one, Black Lives Matter, Justice Now, Black Lives Matter. As much as things change, some things stay the same. Why do they get to brutalize and murder us and we get to blame? Police Terror USA. This was the first one I did here with Oscar Grant, and they had the bark insignia right there. So I remixed it on several occasions. The Black Code. A Black person has no rights, which a institutional racist judicial system is bound to respect. It gives the appearance of being fair and just when the biased decisions have already been decided. This is in Australia. This is when I collaborated with Aboriginal artist Richard Bell. They wanted to highlight Peter Norman, who was in solidarity with them at the Olympics. He wore the badge for Olympians for Human Rights. And now the young people didn't know who he was. So they wanted to highlight him in connection with John Carlos and Thomas Smith. And a lot of young people who were coming back and forth were asking us questions about it. And we were explaining it to them about it, the whole bit. Because what happened, Peter Norman had to, for the next Olympics, the Wayne Colette Olympics, the one I showed earlier, for the, I think, 1970, he still had the fastest time, qualifying time from Australia to participate. But because he was in solidarity with John Carlos and Thomas Smith at the 1960 Olympics, they blacklisted him. He was never able to run again. And that, that was during the apartheid era. They call it the Apartheid Triangle then, where the protests went on between Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. And that was where they had major protests against the sporting events that would take place, and particularly in the rugby events that took place in New Zealand and what have you. Here's again, this is one also dealing with the Olympics. It was they call it the I Coco Massacre, October 2nd, 1968, prior to the Olympics, when you had hundreds of students and activists who were lured to a location, thought they were going to be negotiating, to the square, and they opened up on them, they slaughtered them. They tried to claim there was only 60, and it was a building right on the outside of the square where they were up in these buildings, and they said the ones who they could tell something was going on because certain ones had these things around their arm, straps around their arm. And they said when all got in there, they just started slaughtering on that big square. I went there. I was invited there in a couple of years back. And when the commemoration of that was taking place, and I will get a little history behind it. And so I did this one. It showed that, and this is the symbol saying the Pentagon sent radio, weapons, ammunition, and radio control training material to Mexico before and during the massacre. So that's why this was done for that, U.S. Pentagon. And I had to kind of do some reference research to get the kind of weapons that were used during that time. And this symbol here is the flag of the Mexican flag. Kind of, I'll play out for that. This is on Chiapas. This is me in the store being introduced by Caleb Duarte when I went down to do an artist residency to the Zapatistas. They run this store. This is on the road to Palenque. And we were coming back to paint this building with a collective of about 18 artists. We came back, I think it came back about a year or two later, because I went down there every other year for about 3 years straight and did some work. And we came back a couple of years later. And this is what collection of artists put the installations, all that in here. Yeah, and it's it's about, and what they wanted in it was about solidarity, education, all those things, to be of health, to be in the this exhibition itself of the work.
Yeah, the Zapatistas are Mayan people who have been resisting the oppression that they face in Mexico and South America, and their method of resistance has been brilliant. Beautiful people. Yeah.
And this is showing the Zapatista dials that you'll see here on up here. People still say they see it. It's still up. It's still when they travel that way. They see it. These are my contributions, because they like the humor and some of this stuff. So production, cultural, solidarity, education. They call themselves people on the scale. move at their pace. People of the Quorum also. Inspired with the Quorum.
And they call themselves people of the what was the other word?
People of the Quorum.
The other before that?
Oh, there's snail's pace. They move at a snail's pace.
Okay.
Take their time, yeah.
Mhm.
These are embroideries of my work done by 2 different Mayan women collectives.
Oh, beautiful.
Who Japanese Mayan women collectives. Where Kellogg had to take them to 2 different, took about 6 months, they say. Because some parts of it had to be done in hand embroidered, other parts had to be done electronically. And so in the Zapatera Negra plays off the Zapatista Panthers. And so there was a whole youth movement that we started there called Zapatera Negra. Music was come out of it. Solidarity came out of it. Yeah. So there was a whole lot of things that came out of that. Yeah. It's a book called on it, connected to it as well. This is Allendale Elementary School in Oakland when I was invited there with the young people.
Beautiful.
This is in Urbis in Manchester, England. That look like right here, but that's Urbis in Manchester, England. When I had my first exhibit, and this is when I went before the exhibit, a couple of months, because these are young people who were building their self-esteems up. And so they were doing artwork and stuff, and I worked with them along with their instructors. And their artwork was included in the exhibition as well.
And what area of Manchester you say?
This is Urbis in Manchester. This is about a 2-hour train ride from London. Yeah, and this is in the hood, kind of like. Well, the place, Urbis was a exhibition place, 4 stories, exhibition space, but it doesn't exist anymore. And so they had floor stores with different stuff going on. And so that's where they had this was at one of at the location. This is it here. This is the exhibition. This is one of the amazing exhibitions they had.
Oh, nice.
Yes, this is opening night. This is it was packed. It was up on the.
They're featuring your art there.
Yeah. This was this is you had desks when you came in. When you come up the stairs, you came in. You had sound from that period, and then you go in. When you come into the space, first thing you see is a desk. You have required reading by the Black Panther parties connected to each desk. So you can sit down and you can read what we were required to read. You can see audio and video snippets of historical context of the Panther. Then you had the different displays all going throughout the whole thing. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So it was huge.
How long ago was this?
This was, I think this was this might have been 19, Urbis and Manchester. Oh, about 1968, because it had to go, the reason why it had to go to the New Museum of Contemporary Art in New York was having another exhibit. So we had to leave there, yeah. So it's about 1968, 1968. 1968, I went there during the summer, August. The exhibit opened up in October of 1968 and went on to April, around 1st of April, 1969. And they said they had over 43,000 people who came to that exhibit. Those young people, they took me to a location where they were inspired by John Collins at the Olympics, and they did a 5th statue. And they got criticized for it. And so they were asking me what I think. I told them it was solidarity and what it was about. Because the lack of understanding, insight, and ignorance of those who were attacking them young people, because they did a monument that was in pride for them, still in pride.
Yeah, you're resisting them. It's a symbol. You're going against their imperial power.
Right.
Their symbol. Just to put a fist up is considered threatening.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, and that's again showing the opening night reception. This is in urban. This is here is in New Zealand, Auckland. When I was first time I was invited to Elam International School of Fine Arts to do a artist in residency. I met a teacher when I was at the when I was in Australia for the Biennale, who taught there, who was an artist who was participating in the Biennale in Australia. And she asked me, was I interested in coming? And she knew of my work and was inspired by it. She told her, yeah, if you can work it out. And so about a year later, 2010, I think it was, she had worked it out for me to come. But just prior to that, she got back, you know, and the Polynesian Panthers, who had never had been in contact with, except back through contact through them sending information and what have you back in the day. One of them came to the Bay Area because they let him come for family issues is happening here. And I told him that I might be coming because it was being worked out. And so it was worked out. But this is up by the university. These here about 12 feet high. They're all up on the streets, all about the university where they plastered for the year. But there was so much interest in my coming that I wasn't able to do the artisan residency, but I had to travel to the North and the South Island because there's two islands that make up New Zealand. I mean, excuse me, New Zealand. So I traveled for 51 days almost, giving talks about the history behind the artwork as I am today now, but it may be in different briefer form. I went to the Marais, the spiritual location. I went to challenge where young people were challenged, like psychologically. Went to some of the major museums, everywhere on both North and South Island for 51 days, talking about the history behind the artwork.
Might be upstairs in my bedroom.
This one here, as well as at the library, as another trip there. And they were planning a action because you had some of those there who were trying to take their land. And they were fighting against the land grab out by the airport because it's, you know, it's a good land and they're trying to take it in that context. So there was some ideas that they were putting forth for posters or signs and stuff like that. And so I was just giving some suggestions.
And where was this?
This is in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I went to New Zealand about I've been every other year for about 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
This is all Samoan art students, mostly Samoan art students at the art school I went to one of the art schools I went to there. And I mean, I seen one in there. I seen some amazing pictures that they done of John Coltrane and others, artists, other musical performers, Tupac. I mean, there's some brilliant artists.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And this is again, I went and I collaborated with a Aboriginal artist named Wayne Ewell in Rigo 23, which is an artist who does a lot of work here, who's also from Portugal, where I've been. And I had to decide on what my contribution would be. So I started trying to research, and I came across the twist symbol. They have the single twist means that we may go different ways, but we all go ways come back together. And I contacted Wayne Ewell to let him know that. He said, "Oh, that's just a common symbol, great symbol, but it's a common symbol." Then he said, the way he said, I said, "Well, I'll have to figure out how I'm going to have an impact with it." So I thought about it, and I did. I combined the design. In my design, I put together the twist symbol and the Maori flag, and I came up with this as my.
Oh, right.
My friend, Maori friends, overcoming oppression is our path to unity. Gave me the general meaning of that in Maori.
Right on.
Then this is in Argentina. Tri-marching is a thing that these youngsters do every year, where they invite graphic designers to come and to do presentations because they felt they didn't have any qualified designers to help them to grow beyond what they were. So that year they asked me to come along, and they do at this big major basketball stadium in Mar del Plata on the coast. And you have people come from Brazil, Paraguay, Colombia, both everywhere, Brazil, everywhere. Mexico. I mean, they come from everywhere. And there's about 5,000 to 7,000 young people, most, and they're in the major basketball stadium. You're up on the stand with this professional interpreter, and they had workshops, all that. In between, they had the corridor with different artists and a lot of young artists get with their work. Then outside, they had skateboarding and music playing. Then when they call you back, they give you time to come back in. People come in and hear your presentation. And I gave my presentation for about an hour. And I was, and then you go, you get 7 curtain calls. You wonder what it is. I had to think about what it was. Why was it so? What was the thing about how they appreciated the presentation? And it came to me that they could see in the artwork the resistance in dealing with social justice issues in the context of being inspired by that, in the context of themselves and what they're having to deal with in their countries, in their location. Yeah, so that became the commonality. So this is the after I gave the presentation.
Right on.
This is in Portugal. As you go up 4 floors, each floor had a poster that's wrapped around there. Then you go up to the next floor. They all the way up 4 floors of material. As you see, they got painted on the wall.
Beautiful.
Yes. And as you go down, you see and they think there's a whole group of collective artists that did this one. And this is again.
Nice.
Yeah. So this is this one. But now you're gonna see the same picture again here. This now is not in Portugal. This is in Nottingham, where I was in Nottingham to do an exhibition at the museum in Nottingham, contemporary. This is in Bogota, Colombia. When you had these graphic designers who knew of my work, and they were working there, and they asked them about. They said, well, they could like to do a project, and they said, well, propose it to us. They proposed this, and they opened up and said, yeah. And so I was invited to Bogota, Colombia, to do this exhibit here, and some of the Afro Colombians came out. It was amazing, amazing. This is on the streets, coming up and down the street. They had on the sides of the building, yeah, stuff like that. As you go up and down the street, you see these. Yeah.
Wow.
This is in Bogota. This is in S.N.C.C in Brazil.
Wow.
Now this is one of them huge New York blocks. Building called S.N.C.C, where like culture, all kinds of stuff goes out. They had to bring cranes in. They said to do this, put this up on the wall. And they had about the 10 elevators with the artwork on the elevators. This is coming to opening night. Yeah, setting it up, getting it ready. This is opening night. I mean, these are pictures I have, but they really don't reflect the magnitude of the people. You had a lot of brothers and sisters came from the favelas to see the work as well. Yeah.
Beautiful.
This is on 23rd, 26th Street, between Broadway and Telegraph in Oakland. This is Artisan Solidarity with Palestine. And this was my contribution. Free the land. This is the opening night. This is taking a picture with the young Palestinian kids in front of me. This is in Arusha, Tanzania, when I went there with Sister Charlotte, former Panther Peter Neal. Let me go back to that. And they wanted to, they liked this picture. So when I came, they wanted me to do, they want you to include this in the art thing that they were doing on the wall. And all these brothers are from different, some may be my side, there may be other tribes, but they're coming together in unity. The whole spoken word art is about unity and solidarity, not about the, they got their own identity, but it's not a war, self-inflicting fights that's going on between them.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is here is in New Zealand. They got a lot of gangs in New Zealand. That's where the meth and all that stuff comes through that area, that triangle down there. And the area where we was in the north, the South Auckland. And South Auckland is where a lot of gangbanging goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened is when I did the exhibit with the, I talked about with the Wayne Ewell, we did it at a cultural center and one of these strip malls. And the youngsters would come by and they always talk to us. And the guy it was a part of it was about the Auckland International Art Festival. And because all of these, he's seen this, the reporter was writing on it. And he's seen it, and it was such an amazing, what he saw, that he said that was the best part of the overall International Art Festival at that time. So they invited me back, and I went out there to another place. These youngsters, and they wanted to do something about solidarity because of gang banging. They do have the colors, blues and red, and bloods and crips, all that. Mm-hmm. But they don't call the tattoos culturally, they call them mochas, not tattoos. Mm-hmm. But they want to do something that had the word designs of peace, as opposed to just the symbolism that they usually have. So this we come up, and this is at a mall right across the street from a library as a permanent just exhibition. This is Tommy Iti, who was one of the, he's from Tuskegee. And he met me at the airport with the Panthers when I first visited. And they took me straight to the Marae and gave me my official welcoming to the land. He's an artist and activist. They tried to charge him with terrorist charges because they refused to budge in the negotiations for their land rights. Mm-hmm. And so they tried to demonize them and stuff, and it didn't work. So they had to acknowledge that it was wrong what took place. And now there's a film is being made about that issue. I mean, they took them out in the winter, put them on babies, women, put them on face down, terrorized. Yeah. So there's a film being made about that now that I think is supposed to be coming out in September. Yeah. But I went to Tuskegee, I went all up in the color, it's children of the mist because there's a lot of fog up there. You have to go up and up, get up there in some areas. Yeah. But it's amazing. It's beautiful. Yeah. This is youngsters at less than 1% out there, endangered species. Mental bondage, I call it, so those talking bullets, pointing bullets.
That's New Zealand too?
Oh, no. This was, it complied to New Zealand. Yeah. It can apply to anywhere in the universe right now. Yeah. But New Zealand, yeah, they got, I mean, it's challenging when you get out there in the hood, in that area. And yeah. You got a lot of motorcycle gangs. Yeah. But then those same gangs were part of overcoming their fight for Maori rights. When they were battling for Maori rights. You had Black Power gangs. You had all kinds of names of the gang. Yeah. I remember Tigalonis, who was the Polynesian Panther, who was the Minister of Culture there. He had me, he said, I got a friend of mine who wants to come meet you and at the galleries. And so I went to the gallery the next day, and this guy come in, and he had this other guy with him looked like one of them big linebackers for playing football, And I went back, I said, now me and the other guy was talking, the photographer, I said, yeah, that look like gangster. And he said, and then I asked him, he said, yeah, they was. But how I found out, I looked at the news. I got intrigued when looking at the YouTube news about some of the gangs and trying to see what that was about. And they had a gang leader of one of the Black Power gang, which this guy was. They was coming to apologize to how they were treating the women in the gang. And he was coming to the meeting. And when he came to, and they showed him at the meeting, it was the same guy who were Tigaloo. Yeah.
Hmm.
So there was these links that they had, you know. There. Mhm. I mean, it's a beautiful country. Well, you got a beautiful country everywhere, but you don't have no poisonous insects, snakes, or insects there. Whereas in Australia, you probably got the top 10 poison everything. It's totally different. Yeah. And this here then with you know, the youngsters don't know what they're getting themselves in when they get in modern day slavery. Getting this institution is about profit, privatizations of prison. I remember the first time I went to Australia, Aboriginal Richard Bell, and I asked him about the do they have they had any private prisons there? And he said, yeah, Bechtel was then in the business there, privatization of prisons. Yeah. So, and he was surprised when the first time I came, and I caught up with Richard Bell and another activist named Gary Foley, well known from Melbourne, and they were surprised that I could get in because we couldn't get in, we couldn't go there, then they couldn't come out. It was just messages coming back and forth. This was during the apartheid era as well, still in the 70s, 60s, 70s. Yeah, so you had that situation going on there. Then I was able to meet with, because the Australian Panthers were based in Brisbane, and that's where Richard Bell was based in Brisbane, and so that's where we used to meet at all the time. I've been to Sydney, done stuff in Sydney, Melbourne, different places. Yeah, over there.
Were the Australian Panthers, a lot of them Aborigines?
Yes. Yeah. They're yeah. It was about land rights and their human. Yeah. Oh yeah. They had a tent city that they set up.
Oh, what do they have to, what do they have to say to you about the genocide carried out against them in Australia?
Oh, they talk about it. They talk about it when that they that's just like they did with the indigenous American Indians here. High rates of alcoholism, high rates of frustrated people living on the streets. Yeah, but and then you get out into the back areas where all the land is, and where they took the land. They get some land rights back, but yeah, it's oh man, it's life was lots of suicide taking place, all those things. Yeah.
Similar to the other country in New Zealand, people are facing similar things. Are they there?
Yeah, well, in New Zealand, they still fighting for their land rights, but they've been in negotiations. So you got these towns and places throughout New Zealand where there have been agreements between the original, the Maori, and the Queen's folks run the cities together in areas, but all of them everything is acknowledged in Maori. Even though they do the Queen stuff, they all have to acknowledge in Maori. They have street signs in Maori, you have highway signs in Maori, you got stadiums named after Maori, you got whole towns named after Maori. Yeah. So in that context, it's different. With Tuhoe now, Tuhoe said they want total independence. They say they're going to set up their own government once they get their right. They got them back. But there's a certain degree, I think, where they had to negotiate because they got land with the forests, the rainforest, all kinds of stuff that has to be managed. So they developing to manage all that. So when you come into their territory, you have to show your passport to them. So they have a whole nother perspective. Yeah. They're more revolutionary, radical in many ways. Yeah. But you do have, you have that. It's challenging there. I mean, I think they might be on about 3 to 4% of the population. Yeah. In New Zealand. Yeah. But there is a high acknowledgement of respect for the Maori there.
Mm.
New Zealand, from a whole group of folks who live there.
Mhm.
Yeah. So now this is the other one. This is called Prison Industrial Complex, private property. Yeah. Getting pretty close to closing out. This is Leonard Peltier and his Mamiya Abu-Jamal, Freedom. I remember we met Mamiya when he was 15 years old, when he was a deputy minister of information for the Black Panther Party in Philadelphia. The first time I met him when we went back to Philadelphia, back during that time. And Leonard Peltier, who's still, you can't understand the only reason why they don't let him out of prison, because it's still the hatred that this government has for the American Indian. I mean, he should have been exonerated, left out of prison.
Mhm.
This is that remix of the one I showed you when Bobby Erica says dealing with justice in relationship to free political prisoners, freedom fighters, USA, fighters for peace, justice, freedom, particularly the struggles against recognized cruel and oppressive conditions, government's inhumane policies and actions. This is at the Lorraine Hansberry Museum, where After Luther King was assassinated. When they were in the process of turning it into a museum, they contacted me wanting to, because they got a Black Power exit display in there, and they have some of the Panthers as well. But they wanted to make a mural of this image to be as a permanent part of the exhibition space. So this is at the Lorraine Hansberry Museum, and I think it's in Tennessee. And I got this is about the last one here. This is called All Power to the People. Paper Girl, the more Richard Nixon. And that's it.
Wow. That was beautiful, brother.
Okay.
And, talk about, first of all, the message, which is a consistent message of revolution, and also dealing with the oppression that our people face and raising up the resistance, and then showing the global impact of your work and of the impact of the Black Panther Party and of our people in general. This is just absolutely beautiful. And it shows how our culture brings beauty out of ugliness, and around the world it inspires people to resist. And your work clearly shows that. And I could see how people could see themselves in the art, because in some cases they're facing misery far more serious than we are. You know, ground into the dust, and they see that beauty, and they're resisting and fighting as well. Just plain beautiful, brother.
Thank you.
Beautiful. The Mayan people, the Palestinian people, the Maui people, the Aborigine people, the people.
Yeah.
Right on, brother. I see what keeps you going. Huh?
Yeah.
That's better than food.
Yeah.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. There was a question here. One brother had asked a question with, first of all, Sister LaShonda Henderson, so inspiring, and Sister Robinson, awesome work, and Brother Dreamchild Renzori. Boy, Brother Douglas dropping some knowledge I was unaware of. This brother knows a whole lot. Brother Malika Kamban said that they're posting part 1 and part 2 on the Panthers on social media. There was a question that one of the viewers had And here's Worley Smith. Emory's art captures the beauty, love, history, philosophy, politics, and full range of emotions of Black people. Mr. Douglas, you're a master artist. Thank you for sharing your genius. So true. And there was a question here. I don't want to allow to Zoo, Baba Emory. Did the Black Panther Party consider what the United States government's response would be to the Black Panther Party? And if they did, what type of strategy, both short and long term, did they develop? I think he's asking what kind of strategies, or were there any strategies when the party first started that you all anticipated coming from the government? And then how did you address this, counterintelligence program?
Well, the only way you could would do, once you knew it, was to expose it through your media, through your lifeline to the people. Mm-hmm. And that people were inspired by and enlightened by and wanted was our paper. And we had great communicators who could talk to those issues. And we were in solidarity with many people who would also support us and around those, repelling those kinds of attacks that was coming up against us. So you had to insulate yourself in many ways with the community, as much as you could. But you understand, this was a youth movement. This wasn't like we had 50 years of experience. This was on the job training as we evolved. And it wasn't like an even thing across the board. Some were more knowledgeable than others. And it was always trying to put things in place to deal with issues. But we always depended on the community, exposing things to the community about what was taking place. Mm-hmm. To try to nip those things in the bud as much as we could.
Yeah, I mean, the time you got hit, that's when the real heavy hit started on movements. You had them on individuals, the killing of Malcolm, and then as they began to hit you, King, and then others within the party, but then just a whole out attack. 80% of the FBI's counterintelligence program was developed, directed against the Black Panther Party. So that was a very difficult thing to withstand. When you're in the midst of growing, you're young, it's a new movement, rough, real rough, and you stood strong. And I think one of the things that's interesting about that is that it was true of the Garvey movement and other movements as well. The heavier the attack that usually comes, while the organization suffers, people do, it's also when you get a huge amount of support. It's a huge amount of support that comes in because we're wired for that as a people, But we can learn a lot from what are strategies and tactics for dealing with that. But when you're in the midst of that, you are being hit by a state, which means the armed agencies of the state. When you're a nation within a nation, you're not a state, you don't have an army, you don't have police, you don't have all of this. So an organization has to come up with this.
Right.
And that's very rough. That's very rough. And the party stood up as best as they could.
Yes.
This harsh attack. But what you've displayed here is just awesome. And the global impact of it, most of us don't appreciate, because we don't appreciate just how strong this culture is. And when we talk about culture, it's political, it's economic, it's social, it's artistic, it's music, it's a whole thing. And the example that you're providing of the impact of the art is just a small part of the impact of the movements in general. And you can see it's global. And I mean, global, I think people got a different meaning of global from those examples there. And the fact you've been visiting back and forth. And I could see why the Maori people would embrace you. They're fighting warrior people, Now, I'm sure that they got a lot out of the symbols of the Panther resistance. And the brother was hugging you. He looked like somebody you don't mess with, what I mean? And then the beautiful Oh, what's that called that they put on their face?
And the mochas, tattoos, mochas.
Yeah, beautiful,
Yeah.
artistic.
Mhm.
I think Mike Tyson's looks like they come from there. They
Yeah,
have
he
that.
did. Yeah, they admire that Mike from that. They always talk.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it is. A Maori tattoo, what he has.
yeah. Usually I don't like that stuff, especially on the face. But on
Mhm.
that face, really
Yeah.
looks good because of the flow of it. I'm sure
Yeah,
the meaning
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
It's great art. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I
Yeah.
could say if you go.
I got one right here on my arm, right here that they did.
Okay.
Right here.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. You
Mhm.
see what happened. It took me to visit an artist who was well known and knew my work,
Mhm.
and met him, and they were going to do the tattoo when I came back up to the next what we're going back to. And
Mhm.
when he got out there, he said it was a bird that flew off the blackbird that flew off the porch of the artist when we were leaving. And they said, "Oh, that means you coming back." That was my first visit, and they did a bird. I've been back 5 times every other year
Right
up
on.
until the meltdown.
When's the last time you were back?
Well, just the year before, the year before shelter in place for COVID.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right on.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And that's also the dispersion, the South Pacific and
Mhm.
all of those areas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The culture of the people there is great.
Oh yeah.
And the first people in all those areas were Black.
Mhm.
And you can
Yeah.
see that Black blood in the Maori people there.
Mhm.
You can see it. And what's the big actor who's the big body building guy, the biggest grossing actor right now?
Oh yeah, right now. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he comes out of that area
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah. Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Well, brother, this was beautiful, man.
Oh, thank
I
you.
mean, if I was hungry, I would be full.
Oh, okay.
I am full, but it's not a physical hunger that's been met. It's a spiritual one. That's just
Mhm.
absolutely beautiful, brother.
Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. Right on.
Okay.
Hey, hey,
Okay.
hey. Thanks a lot, brother.
Okay, my brother. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, brother.